Chapter 64. D3 had finally made it into her outfit, the grand habit de cour, known as the Royal French Court stiff body gown. She appeared elaborately decorated, almost royal, in the Rococo style, although she was extremely uncomfortable wearing the inverted conical torso and false hips known as panniers. With a quick glance at a full-length mirror, Dawn Rothlanders III sighed and hoped that she would blend into the rest of the Chateau de Bellevue. She also firmly realized that she would never forgive Mr. Blue for that final instruction. Try to find some clothing? Right. After almost an hour of squeezing her various lady parts into this awful vice of a dress, D3 hoped further offhanded instruction from the old time traveler would be easier to implement. She cracked the door to her quarters, peeking out into the hallway. It was bright, filled with sunshine and beautiful ancient paintings and antiques, yet it was also thankfully empty. Not ready for oglers quite yet, D3 burst out of her room and ran forward, her dress catching on the doorknob, yanking her backward, sending her landing on her butt. As she struggled to an upright position, she heard footsteps behind her getting louder, heading her direction. She swayed from side to side, but just couldn't get up. It was no use. "That was pretty funny to watch, dear," Sully's voice announced from behind her. D3 felt the old man grab her under her elbows, but before she could protest, she was being lifted to a standing position. She turned to face him, letting a few uncomfortable laughs erupt as Sully wore a big, long, white powdered wig, which accentuated his long frock coat, and this ancient colloquial French look was complete with stockings, knee-length breeches, and giant buckles, both on his shoes and his belt. "Oh," he asked, looking down at the outfit. "Just what the doctor ordered, right? The old boy told me to blend in." Again, D3 chuckled, this time a bit more softly and to herself. "Lovin' the hair." "Oi, at least this wig hasn't had any bald spots," the retired Commodore replied, fiddling with his fake, powdered white ponytail. D3 peered around. "Where's Mr. Blue anyway? How ridiculous is his get-up?" Sully pointed. "Straight ahead." The pair slowly made their way down the great hall, nearing the Time Lord's room. Sully adopted a mischievous grin. "Right, can't wait to see how that 300-year-old dork is getting all totted up." He readied his fist over the door for a knock. "Probably looks like a complete bloody—" Mr. Blue opened the door. The alien stared at his human companions, both of them completely made up of 1700s French royal regalia. The alien then began to laugh, quite loudly. D3 and Sully noticed that the Time Lord was still wearing his standard azure suit and cobalt tie. "Why aren't you dressed?" D3 asked. Mr. Blue paused in his amusement, and he looked at the pair once more, then strode down the hallway ahead of them. "Oh, wowzers! I can't believe you two actually thought I was serious!" Sully watched the Time Lord hobble down the corridor with his black exclamation point shaped cane. Sometimes I hate that man." "You're a jackass," D3 yelled and followed. The old Time Lord ran his hand over his short silver hair. No, dear, I just enjoy a good prank." "Nope, I agree with Dawn. You're simply a jackass," the retired Commodore noted as he caught up. Mr. Blue said nothing, but continued walking with a light, faded smile on his lips. "Why are we here again?" Sully asked. The old Time Lord smelled the air. "Breakfast!" Downstairs, the displaced trio were greeted with a magnificent breakfast, presented in the highest and most decadent French style. Pastries, exotic teas and coffees, delicious jams and jellies, roasted breakfast pheasants and hens, and of course, no end of fresh bread biscuits, muffins, rolls, and buttered scones. The elderly Time Lord cried out in joy as he nibbled. D3, Sully, and Mr. Blue were then also greeted by untrusting stares, hushed whispers, and passive-aggressive gazes. "Thought you didn't have to eat, old boy?" Sully asked. The Time Lord replied, "I don't have to do a great many things, Sully, and I get the feeling I won't be coming to France in the 18th century again. May as well have a scone, for God's sake." The retired Commodore nodded and sipped French tea from the 1700s. He remained unimpressed. D3 was hungry, and ignoring the stares around her, she tore into several sweet rolls. They tasted like cinnamon, had a vanilla ice cream in the middle, She licked her fingers as crumbs fell onto the exquisitely tailored dress. The French royalty around her stared daggers. When they whispered, she could understand perfectly what they were saying. The alien in the lapis suit had finally finished a pheasant wing when D3 turned to him. How can I understand French? You can't, Mr. Blue replied. Purge can. She has a semi-unperfect translation circuit that can emit via telephoton permeable field. D3 took a sip of dark French coffee, then shook her head. You could have just said Purge is translating for you. The Time Lord appeared confused. I did, didn't I? I'll try something a bit more plain. D3 turned to face him. Why are we here? Ah, Mr. Blue dropped his napkin on his plate. That's the right question to be asking. Sully leaned over. Sure, right. Since you said you've been here before. I have. Long time ago. In about 20 years or so. That makes absolutely no... Don't interrupt. Don, I'm here because there's an issue with this time, with this place, with what is happening regarding the coven, and with you. That is why we are here. D3 put up her hands. What coven? And what do you mean with me? What did I do? She noticed all of the guests were staring at her in her strange little group. You come from a very specific lineage, with a very specific ability. Mr. Blue stood. Jade had it, as did her ancestor, Lady J. Sylvia Esquire, as does her descendant, you. D3 continued to listen, although she was uncomfortable and noticed that everyone around them was listening in as well. The Time Lord continued. This ability first manifests in the coven in the 1700s in France. Others think it would be witchcraft, yet it is so much more. It is the power to stop time itself. How do you mean? D3 asked. She wondered why everyone, all the French royalty, were sitting so very still, listening so very intently. Mr. Blue peered around the room. You humans! He stood abruptly, voice booming. You take what you see for granted, thinking everything is as it appears, but it simply isn't. You think an hour is an hour, Experience the same way for all people. You're born, you age, you die, and the opposite never ever occurs. The fact is, you are wrong. Fire, metal, smoke, water, etc. You think all these things are real, due to the fact that they appear to be. Yet, the closer you look, going down the subatomic plane, suddenly your logic falls apart. Your reality, as you know it, ceases to have any meaning. Solid matter does not exist. Everything is permeable. Time goes both directions. You can have a cat that is dead and alive in the same time. What the hell are you talking about? D3 suddenly felt very exposed. Everyone in the entire dining hall was silent and still, motionless, watching the Time Lord and D3 and Sully. The retired Commodore lit a cigarette. Strogenus cat! And I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that Einstein never subscribed to that particular quantum theory. Correct! Mr. Blue snapped his fingers. That is why I keep that old man around. He's rather clever. Ignoring the silent, eerie stares of the hall full of ancient French folks, D3 stood defiantly. So, why the hell do you keep me around? Because I'm the great-whatever granddaughter of some chick that used to travel with you? The Time Lord listened non-committally as he tossed a scone in the air. Sorry to say, the typical human's one-way war with time is constantly fought and lost. Fine. Then I'm sorry to say you sound like a pretentious ass. You make existence itself sound trivial. I'm supposed to believe that there's nothing but chaos? D3 had not quite finished with the rant before she noticed the Time Lord was walking away with the pastry still hanging in the air. Sully dropped his smoke. The traveler in the cobalt suit continued. Actually, there is a system in purpose to existence, yet the order of the omniverse is something, he sighed, something that humans could never fathom. So, what, Time Lords do? After a moment to consider, Mr. Blue seemed very melancholy. No, Don, no, they didn't. And they didn't know what to do about it. So they did nothing. After a moment of biting, complete silence filled the air. Suddenly, the elderly Time Lord grinned As he walked around the table, the entire room frozen. Vacant stares remained still on the faces of everyone in the Chateau de Bellevue, trapped, motionless, as if time was on pause.
I keep you around, D3, because you are the most powerful of your line. When someone of your lineage, say, Jade, Lady J. Sylvia Esquire III, whomever, comes in contact with sufficient Ultron energy.
What is Ultron energy?
Stop interrupting. Damn, that's rude. Ultron energy is background temporal radiation, and you've been suffused quite a bit of it. Enough to trigger your latent temporal ability.
D3 shook her head, staring around at the wax statues that remained fixed. Because I can stop time? I thought you didn't want me to. It ages me worse than smoking or something like that. Mr. Blue nodded, yet his eyes were half closed in focus.
In the presence of a Time Lord, yes, you can stop time. Yet, in this place, I'm taking the undue strain because I've been here before, and it's technically a recursive time echo, therefore, you shouldn't undergo the aging.
Wait, oh boy. You drug us all the way to France in the 1700s for this?
Sully attempted to get more tea, but when he removed his hand, the tea kettle remained upright, and the liquid frozen mid-pour. Holy shit! D3 grinned at the sight. Mr. Blue smiled slightly, looking out the window to the far forest, where Perch waited.
Now is a special place in time, the beginnings of a fixed point. There is just one problem. The Marquis.
The Marquis? You said not to worry about him. But who is he? The Time Lord adjusted his azure tie.
Long time ago, I was traveling with Jade. We came here to stop Jack Valentine, a powerful temporal sorcerer who absorbed the psychic energy of the active coven to act as his paradox magic. He took the title Marquis to sound, I don't know, mysterious, ominous, whatnot. We're here again because, before he appears, Deceit has targeted this moment to absorb him, his Ultron energy.
Sully snapped his fingers.
To fuel her? Was it ever TARDIS,
Right,
Mr. Blue nodded.
Deceit is getting desperate. That weird time bitch wants to increase her temporal power of the time arc wave she released in this time stream, because we've cut her off at several passes before. Her TARDIS is losing traction. She wants to correct it. Yet, as before, someone here isn't going to let that happen.
Unnatural quiet settled into the vast dining hall. All the courtiers and governesses stopped in mid-action. No sounds of birds or insects outside. Complete temporal calm. Mr. Blue began to stride away, his cane click-clacking in the ancient French floor. Sully wiped his mouth and followed the elderly Time Lord, leaving D3 to stand alone and watch the two time friends meander off, presumably making plans. How are we going to stop Deceit and this Jack Valentine character? The young lady shouted after them.
We're not,
Mr. Blue yelled behind him. What? The old Time Lord peered behind him, with a twinkle in his eye.
You are.
What?